pathway your young person is considering undertaking, their first port of call will be to look at the UniFrog platform that we have registered them on this month. The UniFrog facility is an excellent resource because it allows students to not only search for various university courses, search for apprenticeships, further education courses. It's also an incredible compendium of information for them in terms of careers, but it's also a hugely useful platform for them to store all of their different experiences that they have developed during their time with us at Newman College. So work experience they've undertaken will be recorded here. Any sort of leadership opportunities, fundraising, societies that they belong to that give students that really, really valuable experience can also be recorded here. It's also a useful place to record any awards they've undertaken, and if they're considering doing massive online courses, they can record these there also. There's a directory of what is known as MOOCs that enables students to undertake online training effectively and online awards in various different aspects that are relevant to their subject areas that they're planning on applying for. So in terms of the UCAS process, we will be providing students with a log-on for UCAS at the very, very start of term 3, so that they can start to get registered on the website and start to fill out elements of their application. And term 3 will be where we focus quite intensively on the development of a personal statement for all of our students, whether they're considering going to university or not, because this is of course useful for other applications. But term 2, we spent largely doing the research, doing the groundwork, and getting students to identify and shortlist universities that they might be interested in if this is the pathway that they are considering. So a general overview of the UCAS process is as follows. So students would begin by using UniFrog and the UCAS website in conjunction to start to get a sense of some of the parts of the country they might be interested in going to university, and courses in particular that they find appealing. We then recommend that between term 2 and the summer that students do attend open days if possible. Now, obviously during COVID, this has meant that some open days are actually an online offer instead. So we have included a link here for you to access the UCAS website, which has updates, continual updates on when the nearest open days are going to be for various universities, and whether that offer is an online offer or a face-to-face offer that students can take up. It's hugely important that students attend these open days because it gives them a real feel for the university. Very often students can have a romanticised idea about where they want to study, and when they actually visit the campus, it's not really what they thought it would be. So I do thoroughly recommend that students do actually try to visit, where possible, the campus for the places they intend to study. So once students have made their shortlists and they've collected their prospectuses from the different universities, it's very important as well that they are keeping an eye on student forums and student reviews of different universities in order to make sure they're fully informed about what the student experience at these various establishments is like. And then following that, they can start to prepare their personal statement. Now, your young person will be supported every step of the way with developing this personal statement, not only through regular one-to-one meetings with their mentor, but when they're actually ready to submit that application, they have a one-to-one checking interview with their pastoral leader, who fills out with them the application and actually physically sends it with them, so that we can make sure that they're the best possible representation of themselves. So how many choices do students have? How many universities should they apply for? Well, essentially they're able to apply for 5 different universities. And what we recommend is that students choose at least 2 safe options that fall within the realm of the forecast grades that they have been given. I will talk about forecast grades a little bit more towards the end of this segment. But we also recommend that they choose one or two aspirational. We want students to aim high. They've got nothing to lose by choosing one or two of these. But it's also important as well that they may have one or two insurance choices as well. So it's up to the student what they want to do. So it may be they choose two safe options, two aspirational and one insurance, or it may be they choose two safe, one aspirational and two insurance. It's entirely up to them, but they need to make sure that they can prepare for all eventualities here, because that will ensure that students either gain access to courses they weren't necessarily expecting to be able to, or if things don't go as planned, that there is something to fall back on and they've definitely secured a place at a university. So students who are new to the experience of UCAS and university, in the sense that no one else in their family has ever been, may be eligible for our widening participation programme. So if neither parent of a student has attended university, then the student is considered a first generation scholar. There's access to particular bursaries that can support students towards their applications, but also access to experiences like summer schools that run in July at the end of year 12 that help to get students university ready. And very often these offer coaching on aspects like interviewing, coaching on representing themselves in the application, and so on. And these are really amazing experiences. Students that have attended them have come away feeling so empowered and so confident by engaging in these offers. So if you feel your young person is eligible for these, please encourage them to come and speak to myself or Mr. Marsh, and we will be happy to support them with that process. So just a few deadlines for you. You will see that there is a difference between the UCAS official deadline and our own internal deadlines. And for some of them, there's a significant difference between them. First off, we need to draw your attention to the fact that if your child is considering applying to Oxford or Cambridge, or taking the medical route in any other university, and that includes veterinary science as well and dentistry, then their deadline is earlier than any other application. The UCAS deadline for that is the 13th of October. However, we want to make sure that our students don't have a panic towards the end. If anything needs adjusting, amending, that they've got time to do it, and we've got time to check through everything with them. So students who are planning on that pathway in particular will need to have got their personal statement completed by July, as we'll be encouraging all students to do, but the remainder of their application will also need to have been completed by the 30th of September. And once we're back at school for that autumn term, it does creep up on us very, very quickly. So just some forewarning there for students who are considering applying to Oxford or Cambridge, medicine, dentistry, veterinary, at any other university. The remainder of the courses, there's a little bit more time for students to get their applications completed. And while the UCAS deadline will be more like January the 13th, our internal deadline will be the 14th of November. And again, there's a very, very good reason for why there is a significant difference between those two deadlines. We want our students to be able to get their university applications in as quickly as possible. Universities do not wait until all student applications have been submitted before they start making their offers. They make offers as and when they get them. So in effect, the sooner a student gets their application in, the chance of actually securing a place is much higher at the university of their choice. We also have to factor in that term one is a very, very intense term for students as they move into year 13, because it's a term where they're not only working on these UCAS applications, but they are preparing for their pre-public exams. And that means their mock exams effectively. So it is a time of great pressure, and we don't want to add additional pressure to them by dragging out the deadlines into term two, where they will then have more mock exams or PPEs. So this is a way of making the process as manageable as possible. Our students will tell you from their experiences in year 13 now that it's much better to get it done this way rather than have it hanging over them throughout the year. So As I mentioned, they would have a one-to-one appointment with their PPL to double check their application and make sure everything is as it should be. They will be in receipt of subject references from each of their subject teachers, but also an overall reference from their mentor as part of the overall reference. So they will have plenty of really, really positive aspects to include within their application, and we encourage students to absorb as many opportunities as possible in Year 12. The worst thing is coming to your UCAS application and sitting down with your work experience section and saying, oh, I don't have anything to put in it, or a section that asks you to talk about your leadership or your experiences, your contribution to the wider community, and you have nothing to say about it. We have numerous volunteering opportunities, enrichment opportunities, academy opportunities at Newman College that we are constantly advertising to our students. So if your young person is in Year 12, encourage them to seize every opportunity, because it's better to have too much to say in your application than too little, and it can become a source of stress for students who in September or leading into October start thinking, oh, suddenly I now need to do something. So the more they've already got behind them, the easier this process will be. Alternative route is for your young person to consider an apprenticeship. Now, apprenticeships are becoming increasingly popular amongst students, particularly those who are considering going into accountancy, things like becoming paralegals, solicitors, and those considering NHS careers in areas such as radiography and nursing. As we've discussed in one of our earlier segments, degree level apprenticeships basically run from level 4 to level 7. Many degree level apprenticeships will run from levels 4 to 6, which means they are absolutely the equivalent of degree level study had the student taken a university pathway. Many apprenticeships actually go all the way up to level 7, and that is master's level. Now, the advantages of taking apprenticeships are manifold, and we have discussed these in the parent carer booklet that accompanies this evening's videos. What we will say about apprenticeships is that we have seen a rise in students from Newman College opting to take this pathway. And the feedback we're getting from these students is they feel very much that it is a foot into the door of the industry they want to go into. But also it's a financial consideration for many students who are not necessarily keen on racking up the debt that many of their fellow classmates have taking the university pathway. It also has the advantage, as many of them have fed back to us, of at the end of the apprenticeship, them having already at least 3 years of industry experience when they enter the job market for the chosen career they have in mind. The apprenticeships process itself is not as wedded to a timeline in the same way the UCAS process is. While it will still be really, really important for students to start their research on platforms like UniFrog, where they can look up particular apprenticeship types, where they can explore testimonials to decide whether an apprenticeship is right for them. And it also enables them to access the latest vacancies in terms of apprenticeships. What we would advise students to do as part of their research is attend webinars on apprenticeships. And there are several amazing websites out there that can support with this, one of which is called Amazing Apprenticeships. And these webinars and instructional videos not only support students with the actual application process, but really give them a sense of what it is like to immerse oneself in an apprenticeship so they can make an informed decision about whether this is the right pathway for them. Typically speaking, the vacancies for degree level apprenticeships tend to appear around December time. So they start to be advertised around December time through January and into February. In terms of the actual forms to fill in, this will vary from provider to provider, but students will be expected to provide some form of personal statement. They will be expected to provide some sort of CV and a rundown of their current work experience, along with their forecast grades to the prospective employer. It's also worth considering that different apprenticeship types do not always fit very, very neatly into this September start. Many apprenticeships, for example, can start mid-year, and it is likely for some apprenticeship programs that students will work in part-time work up until this point. So some don't start till the following January, some don't start till the following March, April. So it's worth bearing that in mind. If your young person is keen to have a really, really neat finish to college and a neat start to an apprenticeship, they will need to be looking for those vacancies that start in September. Our experience of students that have gone on to do apprenticeships has been an incredibly positive one. We have several past students who, for example, have gone on into high-flying legal careers through the apprenticeship route, and also those who are in finance and business who have taken this route and have found the experience that they have gained doing these courses absolutely invaluable for them. So it is a pathway that's worth considering, but that is going to depend very, very much on whether your young person has a very specific career in mind, or whether indeed they are keen to get into the workplace straight away. For some students, they may be more interested in pursuing an internship rather than an apprenticeship. Now, internships are forms of extended work experience placements in particular industries. And again, the process for applying for internships involves dealing with the employer directly. Now, in the same way that apprenticeships can be found via UniFrog, via the government website, gov.uk, so too can internships. And you will also find internship opportunities and apprenticeship opportunities through our Student Careers Hub at Newman College. So internships themselves, hugely beneficial for students who have a specific career in mind too. We've got a number of students, for example, who have gone into management internships with a view to then doing business management or hospitality management, and students that have interned at legal firms before embarking upon either a solicitor's apprenticeship or indeed going on to university to study law. So internships too have their value. However, they are unpaid typically. Some are paid, but some of them expect you to give up that time voluntarily. But you will also find that some of them as well are quite flexible in their start times throughout the year. So again, as we were talking about with apprenticeships, if you're expecting a straightaway September start, you'd have to be very, very quick to get in to grab those vacancies. The start time is anywhere throughout the year. The application process does not close as such. It's very much dependent on the individual vacancies that employers have and when they have set their closing date. Your young person may be considering doing Art Foundation as their pathway after Newman College. Now, Art Foundation can be found at two kinds of institution. You can do Art Foundation at university, or you can do Art Foundation at an FE college. Either way, it's really important that you are aware that applications go directly through the provider. So if your young person was planning on doing Art Foundation at a university, they do not follow the UCAS process. They must contact and apply directly through the institution they wish to complete the course at. Art Foundation does not cost anything if the student is under 19 on August the 31st of the year of entry. So that means the course is effectively free of charge for anybody that has gone straight from year 13 in. Applications for Art Foundation will involve students evidencing their work experience and will involve them submitting a personal statement regarding their fit to the course. It's also hugely important that students have maintained a really strong portfolio of their best pieces of work throughout their art course. For when they go to interview for Art Foundation, they will ask to see these portfolios and they will ask students about their creative process in creating these excellent pieces, these portfolio pieces. So if a student is able to maintain that portfolio throughout year 12 and year 13, it's all the easier when they come to apply for these Art Foundation courses. Now, it's important to point out that all of the pathways that we've talked about so far are very, very often taken in conjunction with a gap year, which is another pathway option for students when they leave us here in Newman College. Now, gap years are massively beneficial to students in the sense that it allows them an entire year or up to a year to develop essential experience, develop their soft skills further, and develop their confidence through things like travelling, volunteering, and immersing themselves in key projects. And there are a number of organisations that exist that can help students to build an effective gap year. It's important to remember that the benefits of a gap year in terms of how they're perceived by universities, how they're perceived by employers, lies in what happens during that gap year. And if all a student can demonstrate is that they've travelled from one place to another, that's not really going to be enough to exemplify how they've benefited from that gap year. So organisations will effectively help students develop an itinerary if this is what they're considering, and will help them build towards various volunteering opportunities and opportunities to put themselves outside of their comfort zone to help develop their skills further. So if that is something that is of interest to your young person, and it's something they want to combine with our Art Foundation, or they want to combine with an internship because that could form part of their gap year, then you'll find the details of gap year providers on our website, because we've got another dedicated gap year page, as well as a dedicated apprenticeships page and a dedicated UCAS page. But you'll also find details of the benefits of a gap year for students versus the drawbacks in our parent guide. So gap years, if your student is considering a gap year before university, it's very important that they check whether their course allows for deferred entry. Our advice to students considering a gap year who definitely want to go to university is to apply for a deferred year if they can, because that way they've gone through the process, they've gone through any applications, they've gone through any interviews that are necessary, and they have secured that place ready for when they finish their gap year. However, please be aware that not all university courses will offer deferred entry, and if that is the case, the student will have to apply in the next UCAS cycle, and this may well be while they are still travelling, so it's worth bearing that in mind. Regardless of the pathway that your young person decides to embark upon, forecast grades and references will be necessary. And forecast grades can be a source of stress for students, but it's very important for them to be aware that the forecast grade is based on the teacher's professional judgment over time of the work the student has produced. It can't simply be, I want to apply for this course, I want to apply for this apprenticeship, it requires this, so I want these grades. It has to be demonstrable in the student's work. Now, students do have numerous opportunities to work towards bettering their forecast grades. So effectively what we'll be doing at the end of July of year 12 is we will be giving them an initial forecast grade. This gives them the summer to do additional pieces of work if they want to, right the way through to sort of the end of September when we revise these grades in order to demonstrate that they're working at the highest standard. But they must be working at that higher standard consistently in order for that forecast grade to be moved up. The important thing is students are being realistic with the pathway choices they're making around those forecast grades. As we said, teachers will be optimistic with these grades. They're factoring in further growth across the year, and then looking at the trajectory, all things being equal, that the student appears to be on and that we can evidence that they are on. So students will not only receive these forecast grades, they will receive subject references from each of their subject teachers, as well as a personal reference from their mentor. And all of these together formulate either the UCAS application, the apprenticeship application, the foundation year application, etc.